listen to this. Dr. Barry Taff is a world-renowned parapsychologist who worked out of UCLA's former parapsychology laboratory from 1969 through 1978 as a research associate. He holds a doctorate in physiopsychology. Is that right? Psychophysiology. That's probably right. With a minor in biomedical engineering from UCLA. During his 30-year career, Dr. Taff has investigated more than 3,500 cases of ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists, and has conducted extensive studies in telepathy, precognition, remote viewing. He was also himself investigated as a psychic subject, the results of which were published in Behavioral Neuropsychiatry, A Laboratory Investigation of Telepathy, The Study of a Psychic, Volume 6, Numbers 1 through 12. One of the cases Dr. Taff investigated in 1974, you may recall, gained international fame as the book and motion picture The Entity, starring Barbara Hershey, released by Fox in 1983. It was a really frightening motion picture. Barbara Hershey was repeatedly attacked, sexually assaulted in the movie. It was a real-life occurrence, so she portrayed that, but continuously assaulted by an entity. Dr. Taff has appeared on numerous TV and radio programs, including Strange Universe, Unsolved Mysteries, The Joan Rivers Show, Current Affair, Hard Copy, Sightings, Judge for Yourself, The Extraordinary, and a recurring guest on NBC's The Other Side. Now check this out. He is consulted for government, business, and law enforcement, including the CIA, ONI, NSA, DLI, DIA, DARPA, the FBI, Interpol, LAPD, California Highway Patrol, Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department, and the Westminster Police Department. Wow. He has served as a technical advisor or script doctor on the films Logan's Run, Demon Seed, Altered States, Poltergeist, and The Entity. He's written numerous articles for magazines and journals, has been featured in many books on paranormal subjects ranging from precognition to UFOs. Dr. Taff is also the co-inventor of 6 medical patents which are currently being developed for the market. His new book, Aliens Above, Ghosts Below, Explorations of the Unknown, has just recently been published on the Internet. What an amazing past, Dr. Taff. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Is there any alphabet agency here that you missed?
The National Institute of Mental Health.
What is the DLI? That's
Defense Language Institute.
The Defense Language Institute. Mm-hmm. Just as a matter of curiosity, what is it like dealing with the CIA?
Well, it's like you're dealing with people that are never there, and everything's sort of kind of quiet. You don't get direct answers. You never really know what's going on. You can't ask a lot of poignant questions. You have to sign national security oaths, like 5 times over.
So, in other words, it's exactly what we imagine it to be.
It's a little worse, actually.
A little worse, actually.
I mean, the people were nice, but they're kind of cold, apathetic, very distant, detached.
Uh-huh.
And they're as paranoid of you as you are of them. It's
maybe that's a good thing.
Well, perhaps, depending on who you're dealing with. But it's, it's like the old oxymoron of, military intelligence or government intelligence you can't use.
Yes,
so
of course. All right. A lot of my audience has never heard you before. You did the original investigation on the real entity story, the one Barbara Hershey was in.
Right.
And I suppose we should give our new audience a little bit of history about what that really was like as opposed to what the movie showed us.
Oh, yes, it was, well, as you read in my book, I discuss quite in depth the differences between the movie and reality, and in some ways reality was a lot more interesting than the movie.
Really?
Because we captured a lot more evidence, we had a lot more personal experiences, and I'll sort of try to chronicle that now. When you're investigating hauntings and poltergeist activity or apparitions, you spend a lot of time talking to people and just collecting data, meaning stories, anecdotal information.
Sure.
It's very rare to be in the environment, this field environment and to witness something, and it's even rare to be in the environment and to record something while you're visually observing it. It's extremely rare. It's like the probability of being in an airport with a camcorder and there happens to be a crash of an airliner while you're there. It's like astronomical. It's an astronomical probability.
Yeah, to be in the right place with the right equipment when something actually really happens.
Right, that the phenomena, whatever the nature of it is, happens to be cooperative or present when you're present, which is extremely rare. So it all began when my colleague at the time was in Hunter Books in Westwood, and right really down from the UCLA campus, and he was talking with one of his friends about the work we do, and some women on the other side of one of the bookshelves was overhearing his conversation, and she just casually said, "My house is haunted." And, of course, we get that all the time. People just throw it at us as a big joke. And rather than trying to engage this woman in a detailed conversation in that environment, my colleague thought it would be best if he just took her name and number and we'd get back to her another time.
Was a young woman?
Right. The woman's name was Doris. So we called Mrs. B in the original article, but her first name is Doris, so we refer to her as Doris. We made an appointment to come out and see her. Rather than just interview on the phone, since she lived really close to where we did. She lived in Culver City, and we lived in West Los Angeles. So we went out to see her. It was August of 1974, and we sat down and basically said, "Tell us a story. What are your experiences? What's happening here?" And the first thing she told us was that she'd been repeatedly sexually accosted by 3 entities. And my colleague and I looked at each other, and our eyes essentially rolled back in our heads, and we both thought, oh, my God, this woman's very disturbed.
Yeah, actually, I was going to go even further back than that, and I was going to ask you, so many people will say something like that, but what was it about this woman that made you even take the step to physically take the time and trouble to go and see her? She must have stood out in some way.
When she came up to my colleague, she was very distressed. She was very on edge and nervous, and the keynote in dealing with people that contact us in terms of investigations is that fear seems to be the primary reason, the fundamental reason they call.
Damn right. So
they want to know what's going on, how do they deal with it, what's the nature of it, and, of course, how do you end it, which is something we don't deal with. We try to document it.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, that's very reasonable, and I now understand. She was genuinely, obviously fearful.
Right, and that's in whether you're dealing with, a simple poltergeist manifestation or an abduction, the keynote, the operative word seems to be fear.
Even so, you get to her house and she starts talking about the attacks, and you're rolling your eyes. Right.
The minute she said that, I thought, oh, my God. Normally when we reach a level in an investigation where it's obvious that people are suffering from some form of psychopathology, I just stamp the top of the form with a red T, meaning the person is emotionally disturbed, and we file it away. But we listened to her story. We thought we're there, might as well hear everything she's got to say. And she said that there were 3 male entities, 2 would hold her down, and 1 would attack her. And she described seeing various objects move and strange apparitions of this, like an Asian or Oriental type of a being, and that some of her children had actually witnessed this.
She was being sexually attacked?
Not the sexual, but her being thrown around or bounced around the house like a rag doll. We took it all down and made some audio recordings and took a lot of notes, asked her a lot of questions about it, but we didn't really think it was worth pursuing because it seemed like she basically needed psychiatric evaluation.
So you put the P there.
And we thought, thank you very much for the interview, and if anything further happens, please feel free to call us. Here's our phone number at the lab.
Mm-hmm.
That was it, and she called. We thought that was the end of it. And about a week later, we heard from her, and she said that now her neighbor had witnessed it as well. Well, that took on a whole different dimension.
I understand. All of a sudden, let's go talk to the neighbor.
Well, you see, these types of investigations, you're dealing with what we call corroborative testimony, that other people have seen the same thing at other times, or multiple witnesses. Without that, and or your own observations and recording, it's the big fish story.
Yeah, I know, but once you've got that, it's all up 2 or 3 notches suddenly.
Right, so we went back a week later, and now this is interesting. It was August, it was still August, and it was very, very warm and muggy that evening, and yet the house was uniquely cold. It was distinctively cold. You'd walk in and it looked like you'd shiver. And the bedroom, where it seemed to be the loci of the phenomena, was particularly cold. Yet there was no draft or no breeze. There was no, air conditioning on in the house. We talked to her some more. She described, seeing strange things, and we listened. We talked to the neighbor independently of her. She told us, pretty much reinforced what Doris had said, but we still thought it could be a case of, hysterical, contamination. The people are just on edge and they're sharing stories.
Okay, Doctor, the first thing I've got to ask is, if I walked into a room where I suspected an entity and it was cold, I'd whip out a thermometer so fast.
Oh, we did. We brought some, and whatever the presence was in terms of the reduction in temperature did not register on any thermometer we had.
But you felt it.
Oh, it was very distinctive physically. I mean, it was like you'd walk in and you felt like, there was
Gotcha.
The AC was on full.
All right.
Anyway, this progressed. Now, my colleague was interviewing her in the kitchen, Doris, and, well, during the interview, this is one of many, we walked around the house talking with her, a lower cabinet door swung open and a skillet flew out, taking a parabolic course across the kitchen, landing on the floor with a thud. It didn't fall. It arced out. It flew under its own power.
Now, your colleague saw this?
Yes. I was in another room at the time taking some control photographs, and he saw this, and he yelled, of course, I ran back in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
And we checked make sure there were no wires or springs or people hidden in the lower cabinets, and, of course, there weren't. And it was rather astonishing, and it progressed on from that point to where we began witnessing little things moving around the house, small objects moving. But it took on a bigger dimension where we began to see pops of light, what we called corpuscular masses of light that looked like little tiny comets flitting about the house. And
really?
Since fireflies do not occur out here, we were thought, what is this? So we began to subtly attempt to control the environment, sealing off the house from external light sources.
Right.
By doing this, it naturally amplified these weak light sources, and they were very distinctive and point sources of light that were self-luminous, flying about the house.
You could see them.
We saw them, and we did, in fact, capture one of them with a camera.
With a camera.
With a 35-millimeter camera with Tri-X film shot at a very high speed and pushed in development. What you see is a ball of light with a tail on it. And this depicted almost precisely what we were seeing.
Is that on your website?
Yes. These pictures are contained in the book, and they're also on the site.
All right. We've got a link to your site tonight so people can go out and take a look.
Right.
Well, take a look, folks.
Right. Now, what's intriguing is that we began to, these lights were always greenish yellow, like a lime green. Why, I don't know, but they were distinctively colored in that way. I don't know why. We don't know what it meant. We began to see this. And there was also two other physical aspects of this, the early onset of the case. One was a distinctive odor, a pervasive stench of decomposing or rotting organic matter.
Oh, great.
And it was so profuse that a couple of people that came with us, assistants to help us, got very sick and had to leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
And this has happened, but we've had this prior to this and since then in many other cases. But another thing, which is the most common physical characteristic that we've encountered in 30 years, is the sense of overpressure. And the way I describe this is what you feel if you go in a deep pool at about 10, 12 feet where you feel tremendous pressure on your ears.
Of course.
But we get this at, basically at room temperature at sea level in these environments, and sometimes it's so severe that people go to grab their ears and hold their nose and blow to equalize the pressure in these station tubes.
Again, this I assume cannot be measured with barometric pressure.
No, we tried that and we did nothing, but it seemed to affect people, but it didn't affect instruments.
Gotcha.
And this was quite intense, and it was very disturbing because everybody would kept holding their nose and blowing, and nothing happened. And the case evolved. It evolved further to where to see more brilliant balls of light that seemed to be responsive to our verbal commands. Like we'd ask at things, and things would show up in response to our questions or comments. And the son, her 16-year-old son, who had, by the way, witnessed one instance where Doris was bounced around like a rag doll. He would try to go to her aid. Something picked him up and threw him in the wall, flipped him over, and almost broke his back.
Good Lord.
And this, of course, terrified the son, and they tried to stay away from home as much as possible. We did see and record some more lights, but the lights we saw, what we recorded on 35-millimeter film, did not resemble what we saw. We saw balls of light flying about the room like comets. What we caught seem to be time lapses, these arcs. One of the arcs frames Doris perfectly, as if it's like somehow related to her. And we didn't see this, but maybe our film speed or the shutter speed was too low. So it'd be like if you had a camera and trying to photograph stars, you didn't have a moving platform, you'd get a streak. This might be the same thing. We're getting a time experience.
Oh, I understand.
And it was very impressive. And some of the arcs demonstrate dimensionality in the sense that behind them, the walls meet at a 9-degree angle, yet these arcs are in free space, indicating that they're not projected against the wall.
You would immediately, I suppose, begin, if you could, experimenting with different speeds of film.
Yes.
Probably trying to speed it up.
Yes, and it didn't make any difference. We shot as fast as we could go, both in film and shutter speed, and we still got the same things. Now, we did submit these photographs, the negatives, for analysis by a number of people. One was the West Coast editor of Popular Photography in the mid-'70s, and he said he's never seen anything like these, and he couldn't even begin to explain their nature. In fact, in some of the pictures, the arcs are at almost 90-degree angles to each other, and the woman, Doris, is not even in the room, as if the phenomenon is present when she's not physically in that space.
Well, apparently it was.
Right.
Apparently it was. And she was, how frequently was this woman actually being attacked?
It's hard to say, because, we weren't there every night, but it was occurring like probably every couple of weeks or every couple of days at times, but what we saw was just quite phenomenal. Now, one evening... All
right, hold it right there. We're at the bottom of the hour. It's a great hook. We're talking about The Entity. They made a movie about it starring Barbara Hershey, but this is the real story. This is really what happened. Back now to Dr. Taff. Dr. Taff, welcome back. We were in the middle of this story about the lights and the flying stuff and all the rest of this, of this poor woman. This was in California?
This was in Culver City, California.
Culver City, all right.
Summer of 1974.
So it continues.
Well, today, no.
No, I meant the story.
Right, from when we left off. See, we obtained some photographs, and the lights were very interesting, but we couldn't tell how big they were. We couldn't tell the speed at which they were traveling because we had no reference. So we covered her bedroom walls and ceiling with black poster board and used duct tape to stick them on the ceilings and walls. And unfortunately, whatever the phenomenon was, it again demonstrated its uncooperativeness or lack of cooperativeness, and it began tearing off the poster boards. And we got a frantic call at midnight from Doris, ran back down there, and it tore off the poster boards, tore off the paint and the plaster with them.
Wow.
And now, obviously, she could have done it, but she was a very small, diminutive woman, and I don't think she would go to this extreme to prove anything to us.
Okay.
But at the same time, the fuse box was torn out of the wall and thrown at her, and some candelabras were thrown at her. But we still were suspicious. But beyond that, the investigation continued. Her son said there were some records that if he put on, there were some heavy rock albums that dealt with weird demonic garbage. And he said if these particular records were on, the phenomena would peak and, always occur. So just to, to see if anything would happen, we put the records on and we tolerated this insufferable music. And sure enough, when the records reached their peak, their crescendo, the lights appeared.
Well, they drove Noriega out with it,
Right. And at one point, a full apparition formed, not full-bodied, a half-bodied apparition from the waist up. You could see a large upper torso, arms, shoulders, neck, head of a very large bodied man, but you could make out no salient characteristics in the face.
You saw this?
We all saw this.
You
all fired off hundreds and hundreds of frames of film. This is before there were portable video equipment, so we didn't have that.
Might a person ask how the hell you managed to stand there with an apparition right in front of you? And now I understand that you're professionals, but even at that, how do you stand your ground? I'd be gone.
Well, your heart rate increases, but again, if this is what you're looking for, if this is why you're there, it would, be kind of foolish to, vacate the premises if what you're looking for finally makes an appearance.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, at the same time, I should mention we had a couple of assistants who basically hit the floor when this happened. We heard thuds. We thought something flew off the walls, and it was two of my assistants basically losing consciousness based on what they saw.
Yeah, that would have been me.
And it was quite amazing. Again, the apparitions, the luminous apparitions, were that same lime green color. And it was in the corner of the bedroom. And it was quite astounding. I mean, I don't know precisely how long it lasted, maybe a few seconds, but we found hundreds of frames of film, yet the film came back and there was nothing on it, which made us really wonder. So we took everyone's account independently. We all generally had a high degree of convergence upon what we saw. So what is it? The phenomena kept going, kept occurring, more things happened, more poster boards were torn down. We began to suspect this was more of a poltergeist manifestation because it seemed to be occurring around Doris more than anything else. And as the case went on, I think we did bring in some film equipment because there wasn't portable video then, nothing we could bring in. And
Sure.
That's when Frank DiFelita came in, who ended up writing the book. And he saw a couple, beads of light and some flashes and arcs, but nothing as spectacular as what we'd seen earlier. And the last night we were at her house, this was on Halloween of 1974. It happened to be a full moon.
Great.
And nothing happened. It was just dead. I mean, literally, might as well be a normal environment. Very disappointing, but these things, tend to occur. The phenomenon tends to be evasive and transient. The woman moved shortly after that, and we lost touch with her. She surfaced again a few months later with Frank DiFelita's help, and we found her in Carson, which is a little south of Culver City, maybe 15, 20 miles south.
I know where it is.
And the phenomenon was back again. Now, what's more impressive than just the fact that it returned was the fact that people living on both sides of her who knew nothing about her horrible experiences and encounters began experiencing poltergeist phenomena shortly after she moved in, as if it was a proximity effect.
Wow.
And this is extraordinary because, these things are very rare to document, let alone experience. And so we were there. We saw the lights again. Some objects were thrown about the room. And, she again moved after that. She moved from Carson to to San Bernardino, from San Bernardino to Texas. And we haven't heard from her for many years, actually until the movie came out, which was in February of 1983. And by that time, it pretty much waned. It was all but, gone. So whatever it was seemed to be linked to Doris, not to the house, because we'd been back to the house, and no one that had lived there reported anything unusual going on. So whatever this was related to Doris, not to the house, which again suggests more psychokinetic activity. But again, manifestation of an apparition which was collectively observed, the balls of light which were photographed, the stench, the overpressure. What's going on?
Now, what do you think it was? In other words, do you now, after all this time, lean toward the poltergeist explanation, or was this a haunting? In other words, you saw an apparition.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, based on what we think we know about this field of research, the evidence would more than likely suggest it was more of a poltergeist manifestation, but of a unique nature. Or this phenomena is so multidimensional in its nature, we can't really put our finger on it. We're sort of like the three blind men, touching an elephant, trying to describe it.
I remember you telling a story of a gentleman who ended up with a noose around his neck.
Oh, yes. Now, this case was even more spectacular. In my wildest dreams, I never thought I'd run into another case as unique, as extraordinary, and as spectacular as the Entity case. But in 1989, I received a call from a woman in San Pedro by the name of Jackie Hernandez. In fact, she was so worried that we might think she was emotionally disturbed. She had a friend of hers named Susan Collins initially. And she told us of seeing an apparition, disembodied heads in the attic and everything. And I thought, yeah, right, okay. But she described other events which were more typical of hauntings or poltergeist activity. So we decided to go out there. Again, August, which seems to be a big month for this activity out here. And the night we arrived, we walked in the house, that same stench, the same overpressure. And we started interviewing her. She described seeing numerous old male apparitions, a disembodied head floating at her in the attic, and objects being thrown around, fire spontaneously breaking out, strange lights, water coming out of the woodwork as if there were hoses attached to it. So, we listened, we're taping on videotape now, but we heard this strange pounding in the attic, as if a very heavy man was bouncing around the attic. We went up to the attic, and there was, of course, nothing. I went on this case with a number of other people who I worked with at the time. One is still my associate named Barry Conrad, and who was he's a professional videographer. Another was a man by the name of Jeff Wheatcraft, who apparently became the victim of this phenomena, which is what makes this case distinctive and unique among all the other cases I've worked on. He goes up in the attic, takes some pictures, and before he finishes the last roll, his camera is violently pulled out of his hands. It's dislodged, it's yanked out of his hands, and he comes out of the attic and he's shaking, and he's white as a sheet, and he's hyperventilating. And he told us what happened. We went up to the attic, we found the camera. The body had been separated from the lens, and they were on different sides of the attic, and yet they were totally unscathed. Like, they were in pristine condition, no damage.
Oh,
wow. What did it? We went back up there, and as we're looking around the attic to see what could have done this, we see Jeff being pushed across the attic as if some large invisible hand were shoving his back, and we see his back arch, and he goes lunging across the attic.
Again, Doctor, you saw this person.
Yes, we were there when this happened. And, we thought, well, whatever, we didn't see anything other than his body being pushed. But this was the tip of the iceberg. That night, I should say all of this is documented on video, and it is currently available. This case is currently available on a video.
Okay.
Which I'll give your audience the way they can get hold of it.
And I want to tell my audience again, listen to me, folks. All the photographs things you've just heard about are up on the net, including this latest photograph you're about to hear about. All you've got to do is go on my webpage, go down to Dr. Taft's name, click on it, and you will see the entity photos right away. They are astounding. Astounding. Seeing is believing. Anyway, continue to.
So the case, that particular night, there was some strange viscous liquid dripping inside the cupboard and near the kitchen, and it smelled horrible. It was a horrible stench. So we put some in a sample bag, thinking, we don't know what it was. We had it analyzed, and it came back as human blood plasma.
Human blood
plasma.
Coming from a cabinet.
Coming out of a cupboard. So we, obviously tore the cupboard, some planks out of the cupboard, looking for
at least
anything stuffed behind there, as we always try to rationally, reduce prosaic explanations so we can rule them out.
Yes.
And there was no body back there, no animals back there, and we're left with, well, we don't know where it came from. What's human blood plasma doing seeping out of somebody's cupboard in San Pedro? So the case went on September, I think it was 4th or 9th, I don't have it in front of me. We're back again. We're again in the attic, and weird lights we're seeing, objects caught fire and things like that. We're in the attic, and we're about to come down. And the last person to come down was Jeff, because he was, again, curious. They heard sounds, and we heard this moan, like a yell. And the man who came down, was starting to come down just before Jeff heard this, turned back and fired the camera at Jeff to see where he was going, because the attic was dark. And Jeff was basically strung up by a plastic clothesline that had wrapped itself around his neck in a bowline knot and pulled itself over the rafter on a bolt or a nail and was hanging him.
He was being hung by an entity,
by a force we couldn't see.
Now, somehow, some way, somebody got a picture of this. I mean, you can actually see him there strung up to this damn rafter.
Right.
How would anybody have the presence of mind to take a photograph? I mean,
because the only way, see, Gary Bain, who was the man who basically saved Jeff Wheatcraft's life that night, the only way he could see was by firing the flash in the camera, because he didn't have a flashlight on. He already pushed it down through the crawl hole. So he had to fire the camera, and in doing so, he captured the pictures. He would have fallen on his face if he tried to navigate that distance without a flash. So we have these pictures. Jeff, there were deep rope wounds in his neck, and to say he was traumatized would be an understatement. All he remembers is walking, suddenly blacking out, and then feeling like choking, and then Gary came to his rescue.
Well, what's happened to him? I mean, somebody who goes through this, I've got to tell you, professional or not only would I be out of there, but I think I'd be traumatized for the rest of my life.
But see, this wasn't the piece de resistance. This was only the beginning.
That'd be plenty for me.
Apparently, Jackie Hernandez finally moved out of there many months later. She moved up to Weldon, California, which is, I think, in Bakersfield or something.
Yes.
And, Barry and Jeff followed her. I couldn't because I had other things in my life going on at the time. And while in her little trailer house, Jeff was again attacked in view of at least 5 other people. The chairs and table began to shake. The room got icy cold. He was picked up, levitated with the chair. The chair dropped down. He was thrown up in an arc, hitting the wall where it met the ceiling and knocked out. Now, this was viewed by 5 other people.
Time to retire.
And we thought, they thought it was dead.
Yeah.
Basically, because he was unconscious, and he hit the wall with a resounding crack. And this is, if this is psychokinesis, this is the granddaddy of all psychokinetic manifestations. Now, they were using a Ouija board because they were playing around with it and began to say that the reason this thing was attacking Jeff was because he resembled the person's killer. Now, all of this is detailed in my book in great depth, and it is available in a video called An Unknown Encounter from Barcon Video Productions. Now, this is an 81-minute documentary with we have our own special soundtrack. It's sort of like a mini feature.
Right.
And almost everything that we experienced and we documented is in this video. And even more of this story is contained in the chapter in my book, chapter 3 called The Hazardous Haunting. Now, this case is unique because it's very rare for this phenomenon to attack people. It's even rarer for this phenomenon to attack those people investigating it. So this is unprecedented. And poor Jeff, his life has been turned inside down, and upside down, inside out. He's basically demonstrated symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Of course.
And he's sort of withdrawn and become a mean, bitter, kind of distant person.
And he's not doing this work anymore.
He resigned after this, which certainly I don't blame him for. But I should say that, beyond what happened to Jeff, which was horribly traumatic.
How did that not happen to you? I mean, whether you're there to witness it or you're the one assaulted or whatever, how did that not happen to you? I mean, at some point, fine, you're an investigator, you're a scientist, but still in all.
Well, for some reason, in this particular case, whatever the phenomenon was we were dealing with, it seemed to take a particular interest in Jeff Wheatcraft. It attacked him probably 4 to 5, maybe 6 times during the course of this investigation. And again, if you believe anything coming out of a Ouija board, whether it's just psychic on the part of the people, manipulating the planchette, or it's something discarnate, who knows? It said information came out that a man named Herman Hendrickson apparently had been drowned in 1930 in San Pedro Bay, and the Ouija board said it was Herman Hendrickson, and that his killer looked just like Jeff. His murderer looked like Jeff, and that's why he was after him.
All right, that implies, obviously, that there is, it goes to the whole nature of what is a soul and what is a ghost. What do you think a ghost is? There are really, in your opinion, there are real ghosts or just poltergeist activity?
Oh, no, I, for one, I'd say that the vast majority of the cases I've investigated and that I know about, I'd say fall under the heading of poltergeist or, psychokinetic manifestations. But then we have those that are clear-cut hauntings, and I could discuss those later on this evening, but what we thought this case was a poltergeist manifestation, and we thought the reason the phenomenon was attacking Jeff is that Jackie Hernandez was very attracted to my associate Barry Conrad, who looks a little bit like Elvis Presley, and she felt that Jeff, his best friend and associate in his work, was an impediment to her growing closer, and she thought if he was out of the way, she'd have a clear path to getting closer to Barry.
Therefore, motive for the attacks.
Right. Now, that's great psychology, great psychoanalysis, but it doesn't explain it. It's theory, but, that's it. But, what makes this case even more of a conundrum is the fact that in 1996, a crew from Strange Universe went back to Jackie's original house in San Pedro.
Yes.
And she'd been gone from there for more than 6 years. And they went in the house with their equipment, which works very well. It's very reliable Betacam equipment. They don't experience problems with it. While in the house, it just shut off.
It shut off.
It just stopped. They come back out of the house. It mysteriously comes back on again.
Well,
they go back in. It turns off again. They come back out. It turns on again.
Okay, that argues, thank you very much, against poltergeist activity.
Exactly, which makes us think that we don't know what's going on, that we're babes in the woods, and it suggests that there may be something in certain environments that may infect susceptible people, like a psychovirus, and alters them energetically that they can leave and carry some of it with them.
All right. On that note, stay right there. All right, back now to Dr. Barry Taft. Dr. Taft, we were talking about the nature of whatever these things are. One of my favorite movies of all time happens to be Altered States. God, I thought that was a good movie.
No, it's exceptional.
Now, in a sensory, it was all about a sensory deprivation chamber. And I've often wondered about these chambers. You're lowered into, I guess, some probably body temperature water or something, and they close this thing like a giant casket over you. And here you are with nothing to hear, nothing to see, nothing to feel, nothing to taste, nothing at all. All your senses are deprived. What can occur? I mean, I saw the movie, of course, but what really can occur?
Well, it seems that when normal sensory cognition is suppressed or inhibited, a subtler form of communication takes over. And regarding the paranormal in general, one of the best techniques for eliciting or provoking mental psi in people is called Gansfeld, which is not as dramatic as sensory deprivation tanks, but it's similar in the sense it's like half ping pong balls over the eyes and sitting in front of a red safety light, and then white noise pumped through headphones into your ears. And what this does, it produces a sense of disorientation, and you can't tell if you're standing up or seated or whatever. You lose your spatial and temporal orientation, and your mental imagery stands out much more intensely in this condition than it does normally, because your senses are rendered essentially useless. And
so, in other words, then you do eventually enter a true altered state if all senses are deprived, because you begin entering an area of the mind that you don't spend time in any other time.
Correct.
I hear you. I'm going to take you down several different roads, and you may not understand why I'm doing it, but I'll get there.
Okay.
I want to read a fax that I just got. Hi, Art. There was an excellent report on remote viewing the other night on Los Angeles UPN 13 with Major Ed Dames, a man I've interviewed. I'm sure you know who he is.
Yes.
If I had recorded it, it would be up on the web. It's one thing to hear him talking about it, but the report actually showed one of his top remote viewers actually working a target. The target was chosen by the news cameraman, and the photographer chose the reference numbers. The target was a recent helicopter crash in L.A., and the remote viewer accurately identified not only the helicopter, but the cause of the crash as well, without any clues or idea what the target could have been. It was, in short, amazing. It really made a believer out of the reporter and a lot of other people, too. Looks like the Major's company, SciTech, is doing well. Thank you, David, in Central California. Now, we have talked about entities, ghosts, poltergeists, whatever in the hell they are. We talked about altered states. And now, for a second, remote viewing. Is remote viewing, Doctor, in your opinion, real?
Oh, yes. I mean, essentially what remote viewing is, it's a combination of telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, retrocognition. It's an integration of all these different aspects of psi that we've given a scientific label to, because science doesn't like terms like telepathy and precognition, because it goes back too far in time. It rings more of psychical research than of modern science. But when remote viewing works, which is not all the time, but when it does work, it can be incredibly precise and detailed. And one of the reasons why there's such an attempt to, I guess, disinform people on what went on with the government's programs for the last 25 years was that it worked very well, and they never quite figured out, nor does anyone else, how it works or why it works. It's sort of like, again, we can't set the forest for the trees. And the people that spend all this money want to make sure that no one uses it against them. So what they do is they basically deny it worked. They reevaluate these statistical models and programs they had and said, oh, it was coincidence, it was luck.
There's only one problem with all of that, and that is that I have interviewed almost every single one of the major players in the government's remote viewing program, and to the man, they may argue about this or that, but to the man, every single one of them said, of course it works.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. When it works, it's deadly accurate. Some of the details that came out of the work were very impressive. I don't care how you alter the numbers or how you reevaluate statistics. Information's information. The question is, what's going on? how is it that human beings can perceive events that are, remote to us in space, from us in space and in time?
And in time as well. That's right.
Because it implies that a part of our consciousness, basically, is linked to every other part of space and time.
Here, here. Now I'm going to yank you in another direction, and that is to UFOs. And your recent book, Aliens Above, Ghosts Below, Explorations of the Unknown, obviously begins to deal, if it talks about aliens, it has to deal in some way with UFOs. We have objects that are traveling through our atmosphere, plenty of documentation, believe me, government satellites and more, 25,000 miles an hour, zigzagging through the atmosphere. Totally impossible, at least for us, without turning to pure jelly. So I presume we are not the ones doing it. A ton of evidence that UFOs are really something. We don't know what, they really are something. A lot of people are beginning to believe that rather than interstellar travelers, we have on our hands dimensional travelers. It's as good a theory as any other. What do you conclude when you look at UFOs and the whole alien phenomena?
Well, if these intelligences can travel vast, whatever they are, if they can, let's say we're looking at interstellar travel, not intergalactic, just interstellar for the most part.
All right.
If they can traverse the distances in real time, not over hundreds, thousands, or millions of years,
right,
they have to be able to travel through some sort of dimensional shift, whether it's, rotating wormholes or quantum singularities. Otherwise, they couldn't get here. So there may not be a lot of difference between dimensional jumping or shifting and interstellar travel at superluminal speeds. But the bottom line is this technology that by whatever's visiting us is so superior to us, it would be like us looking at amoeba.
What made you take the leap from being a parapsychologist to, in some ways, becoming a ufologist in this book? I mean, what made you investigate UFOs? Why did you go after that?
Well, first of all, I've been reading about it since I was a child, but what really, for me, was the sort of the cornerstone of my divergence was the fact that we've had numerous cases that began as poltergeist manifest or poltergeist outbreaks, and that evolved into abductions, or a CE3 or an abduction, or that began as a CE3 or an abduction and evolved into a poltergeist outbreak, or what we call paranormal fallout.
Really?
And the question is, why? Well, I mean, what's going on here? Why does one, and, this has been discussed by many other people. I mean, Jacques Vallée in Passport to Magonia and Invisible College, he wrote about this, and in his book subsequent to that, he's referenced it. There seems to be something regarding our consciousness and the paranormal, as if whatever these vehicles are, these technologies coming here, may use forces we call paranormal the way we use electromagnetism.
Well, we have so many reports of their appearing, disappearing, of morphing into different shapes, of doing things that, and I had a very, very interesting conversation earlier in the day with somebody that I've had dealings with for some time, Robert Bigelow. He's a gazillionaire, and he puts grant money into science, looking in past years at two areas, and that was life after death, whether there really is such a thing, and UFOs, or these objects that traverse our atmosphere that we know are here now. In my discussion with him earlier today, he's trying to decide where to put this grant money, basically, and come up with a way to decide where it would be best used. We both began to talk about our collective feeling that poltergeists, ghosts, remote viewers, UFOs, everything that we've just been talking about is, in the end, when and if we ever understand them, there is going to be a common thread through all of them. And it may have to do with dimensional travel. It's hard to say at this point. But what do you think of that idea that everything we just talked about is really connected?
Well, I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt that this phenomenon this relationships between the paranormal and psi and UFOs is definitely there. I mean, it's demonstrable. And it's very clear to anyone that's investigated this for a long enough period of time. The question is, it may tell us something about our reality, about the universe we live in, that we may not want to hear and we may not be too comfortable with once we know it.
I agree with you.
Because it suggests very strongly that the universe is ordered, it is not chaotic, that there are intelligences vastly superior to us that understand it far better than we ever will, at least for the foreseeable future.
I agree.
And that we might be someone else's guinea pigs, and we may have been that for thousands of years, and there may be very high factions in, let's say, governments that might know this. And the last thing they want to do is tell the people they govern, oh, guess what? We're being manipulated by higher intelligences. There's nothing we can do about it, but continue to vote and continue to pay your taxes.
Mm.
And they can, oh, by the way, they can also violate our airspace at their discretion, and there's not a darn thing we can do about it.
Well, I think we're getting closer. And somebody with the resources of Robert Bigelow is perhaps just what I've been looking for and just what all science in this area has been looking for. It's absolutely riveting. In other words, there is something absolutely real here. And here was the second part of our discussion. I suggested to him, you recall the Brookings report, study done for the government that said things would fall apart if such a revelation were made. It's been 30 years since that Brookings report, and one of the things I suggested to him is that we commission another 30 years of movies about aliens and people like yourself telling us what's occurred in the paranormal world. 30 years since then. Let me ask you, if such a study was done today, what do you think the answer would be? If the question was, how would the American public react?
That's a hard question to answer, Art, because the problem, the reason it's hard, because it's a very subjective response, and that it's so subjective because, see, unless these things affect your daily life and alter what you feel about yourself and the world around you, people don't care. It's cocktail hour talk. It's, movie of the week stuff. It's going up to see the biggest blockbuster feature film about it. But when it affects your life, what you believe about where you come from, where you're going, what your family does, if you should pay taxes, if you should believe and trust your government, that's when and also the biggest thing, if it shatters your belief in your Godhead, in religion, and that's a real big thing for Western society.
My guess, and that's all it is because we'd have to do the study, and maybe we're going to, but my guess would be that Brookings would be every bit as true today as it was 30 years ago. I'd almost be willing to lay money on it.
I think it'd be more true today, because when I've lectured about this subject matter over the last, let's say, 25 to 30 years, and I bring this up, especially around Christmas or Easter,
yes,
the reaction is almost knee-jerk in response. It's fear, it's paranoia, and it's extreme. The irritability levels skyrocket.
Anger.
And anxiety.
A lot of anger.
It's like you're pulling out their humanness. You're telling them that they have a inconceivable past and an unimaginable future.
That's right.
And no one likes that uncertainty before them. And, it's like at some point we will be doing whatever these other intelligences are to other life forms. We're doing it on Earth today. We're just not as good as they are. We're acting as God to higher life forms because we can manipulate them genetically, biologically, chemically, neurochemically, whatever. These things can seem to be able to do it at a much more discreetly than we do, and they're better at it because they've been around longer, maybe.
Well, in your new book, what did you look at? When you looked at UFOs, what did you look at?
Well, the first thing was Chapter 7. It's called Anatomy of an EBE, and I made a very clear connection with the fact that a model for the dinosaur, for what it would have evolved into, called the dinosauroid, it was talked about in Omni in 1980.
Right.
That image is almost exactly what people describe when they're abducted. Now, is that coincidence?
I don't think so.
Or are we seeing a species that evolved from reptiles into a humanoid reptile and is coming here and is playing God with us? Or is maybe as I said in Chapter 10, UFO's the bottom line, maybe these beings know know something about our future we don't. And maybe we're being hybridized, as people like Bud Hopkins and Dr. David Jacobs say, because maybe they know we won't be here very long, or maybe there'll be a catastrophe, or maybe they're trying to populate a star in another system and recreate what they did here, but with a little minor alteration. And we're if we're being used as guinea pigs in genetic source material, that's not something you divulge to your population. I mean, look at Bud Hopkins' last book, Witnessed. It's an exceptional book, and assuming it's all as it appears to be, it's one of the most extraordinary cases on record.
Undeniable.
Right, and the bottom line is, the only thing our government really cares about, in one line they frequently give out about UFOs is it does not represent a threat to national security.
Right, that's not denial of their presence.
Right, they've never said that. They say, well, of course there's no threat.
That's just sort of an explanation about why we don't investigate these things. Ha ha.
Right, now why, if there are no UFOs, why are they even saying there is no threat? See, that's another oxymoron. That's a double negative.
Well, lately, these UFOs, Doctor, have been showing up over our nuclear facilities.
Oh, yes, in the mid-'70s, they were at various SAC bases and nuclear facilities.
Now, I don't know how the military defines threat to national security, but if it's not a threat when one of these things hovers above our nukes, then I'm not a talk show host.
Right.
Hold on, Doctor. We'll be right back. Now, here we go. There are a lot of people that call my show. There are a lot of people worldwide who, with regard to the paranormal, the kind of thing we've been talking about tonight, say, look, I'm a big boy, I can take it, let's have at it, let's go, let's see it. There are a lot of people that call my show with regard to UFOs who say, I'm an adult, trust me, I can handle this information, I can handle it, tell me, I want to know. In all of these different areas, we have people who almost run around welcoming the thing, saying, come on, tell me, I need to know, I want to know the truth, it won't bother me. A lot of people like that.
I know.
But...
And then when they encounter it, they have a fight-or-flight response.
Boy, are you right on the money. And I believe, that if another study is done, it will find that if there's a kind of revelation about all of this sort of stuff that we're talking about, UFOs, the whole parapsychological phenomenon area, that there will be some giant truth regarding where we came from, who we are, where we're going, what our future might be, whether we're under control of others, all that kind of thing. And if that is laid on the public, the reaction would range roughly from most people wouldn't go to work the next day to anarchy, with murders, with all sorts of out-of-control behavior.
You'd have the paradigm shift would result in total abject apathy.
You got
total, and your self-esteem and self-image would be forever shattered.
Belief systems up in smoke.
And the other problem is your belief in any authority would be forever destroyed. And would you dare write a check to the IRS every year?
Science, physics, all up in smoke.
Well, no, I don't think that.
Refiguring, they'd have to do a lot of recalculating.
All this would do is just expanding the various venues of different disciplines of science would expand to incorporate new technology and new awareness, just as it has over, hundreds of years. But the main thing, it would shatter our understanding of people and on a very personal level. It's a very personal thing. It's, for most people, it's like no big deal. But for the average person, like I said, if it doesn't affect their daily life, they don't care. But if it suddenly makes you question who you are and where you come from, and why are you working and beating your brains out, to what end?
So then, suppose you had in your hands the holy grail of proof. Mm-hmm. Now, how hard would you think before you let the world know about it? Before you said, all right, here it is? Well,
put it this way. Given the response that I've seen in teaching over the last 25 or 30 years,
yes,
and the response I've seen from articles I've written, talk shows I've done,
yes,
I say that if the government has any real substantial facts regarding, let's say, UFOs, and it's the can of worms is immense. I mean, it's not just they're coming here and we know it, but let's say they have influenced our past. And
let's say they know.
Right. I think it'd possibly be the worst mistake our government has made in its history.
Completely irresponsible to release that information.
They know darn well this may be the first good thing the government's done in a long time. I mean, they may be protecting us from our own worst enemy, which is ourselves. No one's here to invade us. No one's here to conquer us. No one's here to subjugate us. The whole concept of the idea that every time a inferior culture meets up with a superior one, the inferior one's destroyed or assimilated.
Oh, yes.
I don't think that's applicable in this sense, because if it was applicable, we'd have already seen some indication of it. I just think that the government is looking at history to repeat itself, and they're going to make darn sure they don't basically, shoot themselves in the foot.
Right.
In this case,
so the answer then, I guess, is if you really had the holy grail of proof, you would not necessarily release it?
I wouldn't. Not from what I've seen.
I don't think I would either.
Unless, I mean...
I'm being honest here, and people, what do you mean you wouldn't? I think that it's so serious that I wouldn't even need a visit from a couple guys in suits. I would intellectualize it in my own mind, and I would come to grips with the fact that this information couldn't be released.
Well, there are those academicians and scientists and philosophers and truth seekers who would obviously benefit, and probably their lives would be a lot better off from knowing the truth. But public in general, I think, would in no way directly or indirectly benefit from this information, because it wouldn't make people's lives better. It would make it worse. So to what end would you release this information and basically destroy the infrastructure, the socioeconomic infrastructure of our society? I mean, why?
So would you then conclude to keep this secret forevermore, or would you begin a slow program of indoctrination? Well,
or desensitization.
That's correct.
It's hard to say. It depends on how we evolve as a species, how the human...
Because a lot of people think that's going on right now.
Well, I mean, people think that all these movies we're seeing are part of some big, vast, black program, covert program to indoctrinate. Hollywood makes movies like this because they make money. If they didn't, they'd stop making them. That's
You're exactly right.
And good or bad, if they make money, they work, or they keep making more. If they don't, they fail. Sci-fi has, the last more than 25 years, been a really big draw at the box office. So is, action-adventure. I don't think they're making action-adventure films to make us kill each other more frequently. They make it because they make money, real simple. But I think the course the government takes is going to be determined by how the public responds. But also, another thing is the media. And the media, unfortunately, has been very irresponsible in the way they've dealt with this subject matter for the last 30 years. They always have their ridicule factor.
I know.
And it gets to the point of such absurdity where, like, there was a flap in Michigan back in 1995 or 94.
I have a tape, yeah.
And people were seeing these huge glowing discs over their home, and the media's response was, quite typically, oh, it's the moon or Venus.
Oh, well, it wasn't, though.
And I thought, the obvious response is, if the average person growing up in America can't differentiate a dot of light in the sky, which they know is Venus, and the moon, which they've seen all their life, from a big glowing disc over their house, they need to be institutionalized.
Doctor, I've got a tape here with the radar operator at the National Weather Service calling these objects out as he sees them, sitting there going, "Oh my God, I don't believe this," over Michigan. So that was absolutely real.
Right, but the media, their same ridicule factor. It's like, I think the reason, and you have to give some credit to the media at the same time. They've been exposed to such a quandary of garbage and disinformationists and quacks and people out to just make a quick buck, and liars and frauds and mentalists and whatever, and lunatic fringes, that you can't really blame them at some level for what they're doing. But at the other level, the news, let's say the media, is embellished, it's exaggerated, it's distorted, and it's hyped to get ratings. And if they know that the news that they're promoting or selling is, in essence, not real, not true, why should they believe anything anyone says? I mean, that's pretty simple.
Let's assume for a second that all of this phenomenon does have some commonality. Mm-hmm. If that's true, even though we both agree that exposure of the ultimate news would probably be impossible right now, if you wanted to fund some science work that would begin to try to lay their hands on what's going on by looking at all of these things and looking for a commonality and trying to find something with science as we know it, how would you proceed?
Well, the first thing, you have to determine what it is you're going after. I mean, if you're going after UFOs, the problem, the different phenomena manifest itself in different ways.
I know.
As far as the UFOs, you don't know where they'll be, so you have to sort of be very mobile in order to get there. When you deal with hauntings or, you know, apparitions, they're sort of locked into space, so they're in a semi-controlled, finite environment. You can go there, and it all comes down to instrumentation. The only thing people are going to believe in is instrumented recordings, is optical or acoustic recordings or imaging systems that show us information that we can pretty well determine can't be explained prosaically.
Okay, before I let it go, I don't want to do that. I know that you've got a recording or two. You mentioned that to me before the program.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have?
Okay, this is part of one of our archival tapes. This is from 1976, and this is a man, I should sort of set this up. This is a man who claimed that he was sort of abducted, and there were strange lights around him, strange sounds.
Yes.
We dumped him on his bed once, and we saw a ring of fire burst around him and shoot up in the air, but there was no accelerant on the bed. His kid kept disappearing and reappearing, and anyway, at one point, my colleague and I were at his house, and he collapsed. He passed out, and he started making these really weird sounds. Most of them are just rubbish, just, you know, gibberish.
Yes.
But there were a couple sounds coming out of his mouth that we recorded with our own amplified mic and our tape, which defy explanation because when put through analysis, they produce what pure sine waves, which humans nor animals can make.
Okay.
And it's a little spooky, and I'm not going to play the entire tape because it's far too lengthy, but I'll play an excerpt from it here, and you can hopefully hear it well enough to sort of get a grasp of what we dealt with.
Okay, this was done as the man was collapsed on the bed?
This is as the man passed out, and he was laying face down on the desk, and we kind of turned him over because he was, you know, we couldn't hear him, and we put the mic up to his mouth, and he was sort of in a trance.
Okay.
And this is the sound that we recorded, okay?
All right, fire away.
Return to source. There's no room for you here. Leave. There's no room for you here. Leave.
Oh, my God.
Now, that's just in a small encapsulated version of what we dealt with. This was in March of 1976, and the last thing he said was, "Give me your lives," and, you know, we just like, what?
What? No, I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, that was the last thing he said was, "Give me your lives," and we thought, what? And it was very hard to discern, but there was a resonance in his voice that was inexplicable, and the first thing you heard was like a howling. That was the first sine wave.
Listen to me, that didn't even sound human. I mean, not even close. Now,
people that analyzed the tape, two different firms said that we were basically being fooled. This was a machine we were recording. This was not a human, because humans can't make sounds like this. And, you know, what do you make out of it? I mean, that's those strange sounds, and I mean, you know, we were there. I mean, it was my microphone.
Can you do me, just rewind it just a little bit and play a little more of it and then the end again? I want to hear where he said that.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Just sort of give it a best shot. Rewind a little bit.
Let me. Wait.
Return to source. There's no room for you here. Leave. There's no room for you here. Leave. Give me your life. You cannot have our lives. Or leave.
Oh, man.
So that was a little disconcerting.
Really weird. Boy, do I have something you need to hear now. I interviewed Robert W. Morgan recently.
Oh, the radio show DJ.
No.
Oh.
No, the Bigfoot investigator.
Oh, okay.
And he taped a Bigfoot. He's got a tape of a Bigfoot. And now that you've played that, I think you should hear this. A lot of science was done on the recording you're about to hear, and it also was confirmed that it definitely was not a human voice. It'll take a little listening. Listen to this. See if you can make out what's said at the end here. Now listen. That's it. They repeated it, obviously, what seemed to be speech at the very end there. What'd you think of that?
Well, it's pretty intriguing, to say the least. It was, I mean, I think I've heard clips of that elsewhere, but it doesn't sound very human.
No, it doesn't sound very human. And the voices that you played, the voice you played, definitely didn't sound human. How in heaven's name does such a sound come from a human mouth?
I don't know. I mean, you know, the case didn't involve in anything we could really sink our teeth into, but after a certain point, due to the distress and the trauma the man was experiencing, this was in Anaheim in 1976, his hair turned like white literally within a matter of days, and he was in his mid-30s. So
that would have done it for me.
And so, you know, what do you make of this? And, you know, we can't. I mean, all we know is we saw the fires erupt around him, and we heard of things happening. We recorded the sound, and we had it analyzed by some different people, and everyone said, you know, you've been duped. This is a machine. I said, well, no, we were there. We ruled that out. It was not a machine. So, you know, I mean, I'll tell you, I've lost more friends and acquaintances from discussing these types of matters and playing tapes like this. It's one woman I knew back in '93. She was dying to go to a haunting we had. We brought her out to one in Beverly Hills, and even though nothing happened, she knew enough about what had transpired prior to her coming to on the case that she broke out in a cold sweat and ran into the house screaming.
Yeah.
And she goes, I can't deal with this. I just can't imagine these things happening and you know, being around. She goes, I'd probably have a heart attack.
Well, I'm in that category. I'm so absolutely fascinated by all this, but let me tell you something. During a program I did, I can't remember when it was, a few months ago, my audience knows, all of a sudden, there was this gigantic, it's like 200 pounds hit my door, studio door, and I just about came out of my skin, and I opened the door quickly. Nothing there, nothing. I go into the other room, my wife's asleep, 3 cats asleep on the bed with her. That's it. Nobody else in the house. Now, I didn't see the door at the time, but there's no way that door could not have almost come off its hinges. I still have absolutely no explanation for that, but I'm saying this to illustrate, I mean, I almost became incontinent. I'm saying this to simply illustrate the difference between talking about it, hearing a tape, and having it happen to you. I almost came apart.
Yeah, I've seen, you know, novice researchers run into things with a case in '92 where part of a room began to violently shake as if there was a localized quake under part of a room in a house. And one of our novice researchers just ran out. He couldn't take it. And I said, why were you scared? He says, the room was shaking. There was nothing making it shake, but I saw you people shaking, but we weren't. And yet the wall was shaking, and he said, how do you explain it? I said, I don't, but that's why we're here.
Right.
And it's luck. Or,
right. That's,
that
to me,
got to experience it.
Normal human behavior, just to have the, you know what scared out of you. All right, doctor, can you stick around one more hour or so? We'll open the lines. All right, here we go again. Dr. Barry Taft back again. Doctor, if you have any other tapes like that, by all means, bring them out, and then we'll go to the phones.
The only one I have, the other one, is something I don't really play too often, and there's some problems. One is just a woman in a trance, hysterical, and it's so noisy and boisterous that if I played it now, I'd wake up everybody in this building.
Really? That bad? Huh?
I mean, I could probably send you a copy, but to play it at this hour would literally wake the dead in this building. And also because the phenomena was around the woman, it wasn't connected to her. It was in other people around her, and so at some point perhaps we can play it. But this would be difficult because it's so intense in terms of in order to get it clear, it has to be loud and.
And in fact, you're almost not loud enough. You've got to stay close to the phone here.
Right.
And I realize you don't want to wake anybody up, particularly the dead.
Right.
All right, then we've got plenty of calls. That last tape you played was plenty for me anyway. First-time caller line, you are on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, where are you?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Clay.
Yes, sir.
I heard the recording, heard the one you played, Art Bell, and the one the doctor played, and recalling previous recordings, the hell noise.
Yes.
It seems to me that they seem connected to me. They almost sound similar. Which would maybe suggest that there might be some truth in the demonic activity or even deception, like what the guys a couple nights ago were saying, that there seems to be deception in this area and there seems to be, evil associated with it.
All right, well, that actually comes into a pretty good question. Are you willing to agree with the possibility of demonic possession, demonic activity, demons, evil? Would you suggest that does exist, or would you rather think that it is not so clear-cut?
I think good and evil are manifestations of the human psyche. And I think that anything, whatever it is, whether we create it or it's created by us, or can be good or evil depending on its application. And so I look at it a little more objectively than most people do. And if something harms somebody or deprives somebody of life or sustenance, I think that perhaps can be interpreted pretty much as evil.
Boy, I wonder why your phone connection is kind of fading on me, Doctor.
I don't know. It sounds fine on this end.
And it was really loud before, but now it's kind of faded out. I don't know what happened. Weird. Well, I have experienced weird before, believe me. All right, wildcard line, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hi, this is Haffiard. I'm along the the Carolina coast, and I've been 30 years ago. I started my own investigations and searching for an answer. And a few years later, I came across a book called God Speaks. Actually came out in 1956 by Dodd Mead, and it was written by a man called Meher Baba, and it outlined the whole story, everything that you're talking about, and it goes into the evolution and the involution of consciousness and what it means to all of us. And we're at the end of times in the sense of going from the consciousness of intellectual reasoning into intuition. And that's the next step in humanity's journey back to the source.
And you believe we are at the end of it?
We're at the end of intellectual reasoning, and intuition has to take over. In other words, that heartfelt, instinctual, if you want to call it, but it's actually intuition. It's a higher level of consciousness, and it's truer than our minds.
Do you think, Doctor, there is a movement in that direction? Do you see that?
I just see that, I don't know, I think people are becoming more sheep-like in the sense they're just accepting pretty much anything they're told. They're not questioning sources. They're becoming more naive and more gullible. They're becoming more critical, which might suggest they have faith in whatever they're told rather than questioning the source. And that's disturbing because that means that they can be manipulated without a lot of thought in it.
Okay. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hello.
Yes, sir. I'm calling from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if Dr. Taft had seen the picture of you when you were talking about that woman.
Oh, that woman. Yes.
Last summer.
I doubt that he has. That occurred since he was last on, but I will briefly tell him the story. I interviewed Dr. Taff, just out of curiosity, because, you know, I will interview just about anybody on any subject. And there was a young lady who called herself Harlot. Patsy was her real name, but she called herself Harlot, and without apology, she was a devil worshiper. Yeah. I mean, hail Satan, the whole thing. And I interviewed her for some number of hours. It was an astounding interview in many ways. Toward the end of the interview, just before we went off the air, she told me that her husband had killed her daughter. I don't know if it was a daughter or son. Anyway, her child. Her husband had murdered her child. And I kind of took a shot. I said, well, with your views, you're going to be down with that guy you worship, and your son or daughter, I can't remember now, is going to be in the other place. And she said, oh, no. She said, I long before that occurred, took steps to ensure that my child would go straight to hell with me. And that blew me away. Since that time, I've spoken, for example, with Father Malachi Martin, an exorcist. I've spoken with a number of other people who say that's absolutely possible, that a child could be taken to hell by a parent. It seems not fair. Maybe it's not a fair world. I don't know. Spiritually, that such a thing could occur, that a God wouldn't allow that to happen. But even the experts tell me that indeed it could happen. Now, we were doing a segment on reverse speech. This is kind of complicated, and David Oates, who does reverse speech, reversed Harlot, and we got a lot of really weird results, terrifying results. Anyway, we were doing that show. Now, you may or may not know, I have at this very moment 3 television cameras that are pointed at me, and they sequence, and you can go up to my website, you can see me doing the program, the radio show. And so they snap about, like, I guess one picture every 30 seconds, something like that, and send it to the website. At the very moment that she was talking about taking her daughter to hell, a picture got snapped, because it's got a timestamp on it, of me. And all around the top of my head was like a white, misty, most incredible thing you've ever seen in your whole life. And I didn't, of course, know about it until later, but then I had Keith posted on the website. And there was some kind of presence around me at that exact moment. And it's one of the most remarkable photographs you'll ever see. Have you seen it?
No, I have not seen that, unfortunately. But it sounds like it could be that maybe you were so shocked and traumatized and distressed by what you heard.
Oh, I absolutely was.
With the psychokinetic manifestation of your anxiety and your stress.
Oh, absolutely correct. Keith, if you're out there, would you please quickly just throw that up? I know I ask a lot, but I would like people to see it. A lot of people haven't seen it. It's really, really weird, and it scared me. All right, west of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, where are you?
Colorado.
Colorado, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was calling because I had a question. Doctor, do you really believe that these creatures or manifestations are interdimensional travelers?
You mean regarding UFOs?
Or any of it, really.
Well,
you see,
interdimensional travel doesn't necessarily mean UFOs.
Well, no, I mean, you have to be specific. You say, in terms of the paranormal, when you're dealing with apparitions and ghosts,
yes,
there are different theories and categories for phenomena, and one suggests discarnate intelligence, which implies that something survives corporeal death, and where that consciousness resides could be another dimension. I mean, no one knows. Another theory is that it's psychokinetic, coming from a living human agent. Where the source of that is, how it operates through space, no one knows. Regarding UFOs, as I said before, if these things, if we're dealing with interstellar travel and they can traverse enormous distances in relatively short time, they, by their very nature, must shift some type, have dimensional shifting or jumping in order to achieve their, desired result. So it may be different ways of explaining the same thing.
True.
And I mean, when you talk about different dimensions, they're like 9 or 11 dimensions, but they're like infinite variations on a common theme, and most of them, physical objects as we know them, could not exist in.
All right, tomorrow night I'm going to have a guest, a theoretical physicist named Michio Kaku, Dr. Kaku, who teaches at New York City University, and he is completely convinced there are a minimum of 10 dimensions. I mean, the best minds in our nation right now are beginning to conclude that there are many dimensions. So this is beginning to be conventional thinking in a lot of circles, not really fringy stuff. And I guess that's why I'm moving toward beginning to conclude whether it's UFOs or a lot of the activity you're talking about. We are talking about dimensional either travelers or little portals that occasionally open that account for all these weird things, or that are intentionally open. Who knows?
Right.
Those portals can be opened intentionally and unintentionally.
Well, I mean, anything's possible. I just know that a lot of this phenomenon is very transient in its nature, and it's hard to control.
I've seen them. I've seen them. I've seen them open, and I've seen them close, and I've seen what comes through.
And it's just tried to document any of this with video or film, or? Well,
it's happened in times when you weren't prepared. We weren't really prepared for it. This is going to sound so crazy. I come from a long line of people with heightened sensibilities, I guess you might call it. And I have seen things and heard things and felt things that have just, like that tape that you had with the voice and the fire and everything. It's like I'm shaking thinking about it.
Yep.
But I've seen things like that.
All right. Well, thank you, ma'am. Should we proceed to try and scientifically get a grasp on all of this, Dr. Taft? Do you believe?
Well, I think, as I said, one of the questions earlier was about people relying more on intuition. If we don't objectify this and put a handle on it and scientifically deal with it, we're going to be basically roaming around in the dark. And the problem is, critical judgment is, to me, we're at a low ebb right now in society. And because of that, we don't really examine everything we're told or we see. We just accept it on blind faith. That has some good qualities at a human level, but at a science level, it's disastrous because we can be fooled by our own stupidity and ignorance. And I think the only way we're going to resolve any of this is with science, because without science, we wouldn't be talking right now. You wouldn't have a website. We wouldn't have planes. We wouldn't have furniture. We wouldn't have anything.
Every bit of that is true. Every bit of it's true. I just wonder the best way. And yet you're grounded in the hard sciences. So to you, you need photographs. You need recordings. You need instrumentation.
And also you need replicability, the ability to reproduce your results. And see, what I have to stress is this. If this phenomena, whether it's the paranormal, psi, remote viewing, precognition, ghost apparitions, or UFOs, if these things never occurred, they were never reported, we wouldn't be discussing them. The fact, and if they occurred all the time, they'd be accepted part of our reality, and again, there's no reason to discuss it. It's like talking about turning the tap water on. The fact they occur some of the time, not all the time, tells us one important thing. We're ignorant about a big part of the world we exist in.
Boy, I agree with that one. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Where are you, please?
This is Greg in St. Louis. Let me kill my radio.
Okay, Greg, thank you.
Are we on?
Yes.
Okay, Doctor, I am 45 years old, and back in the early 70s, a classmate of mine and I attended a junior college together. One day, he told me that he was a wizard who practiced Wicca, and he told me that if I wrote something down, it would happen. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Well, I mean, if you believe
the
concept of white magic or magic, and
yeah,
I mean,
I wrote something down involving high-level politicians in the state of Illinois, and within 3 months, they were all under investigation and later indicted.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering also if you've ever heard of this term called temporal anomalies.
Yes.
On the surface of the Earth, like the Devil's Triangle and that.
Oh, yes. What do you know about that, Doctor? Temporal anomalies.
Well, with regard to the Bermuda Triangle, unfortunately, that's not one of the better areas to really focus on because in a lot of investigation has demonstrated that a high percentage of the cases that have been reported there aren't what they appear to be. There have been a lot of exaggeration and, distortion and embellishment. But there are those small number of cases that suggest there is some type of an anomaly there that affects instruments and affects human perception.
Exactly.
But it's not responsible for all the planes and all the boats. I'd say there are also other locations of the Earth that have the same type of anomaly, but not as pronounced. And with regard to the first question he asked, as far as
is there usually electromagnetic anomaly involved?
Sometimes it's gravitational, sometimes it's electromagnetic. But again, it's so transient. Anytime you have a place where a lot of planes and boats traffic in and out of, you're going to have an extraordinarily high percentage of cases due to storms and other natural events.
Of course.
People crash in planes or storms come up and their boats capsized and it's lost at sea. And there's nothing mysterious about that other than the fact that it's sudden. So it's you have to take a lot of what's said with a grain of salt because otherwise you just believe that every time a boat vanishes or a plane goes down, there's some paranormal reason where it might be something, pilot error, mechanical failure.
But there are some pretty good examples of, for example, haunted aircraft.
Oh yes, up in Merced Castle Air Force Base had an aircraft, an old bomber from World War II that was very haunted, according to reports that I've heard.
Well, I know a commercial airline person who told me that one day he will come on and tell the story of the haunting of a commercial aircraft because of a crash, I believe, down in Florida.
Well, Eastern Airlines, right?
You know about it, huh?
It used to be serviced out of, I think, American out here. We actually got wind of it on occasion, but the airlines would not let us go on board.
I'm sure they wouldn't, and actually it's still going on.
And there was a TV movie made about it.
Yep.
With Ernest Borgnine.
That's a fact. Doctor, hold on. We'll be right back. Well, all right, you heard me describe a little while ago a photograph that was taken on the air, one of, I don't know, since I've had the cameras, I guess one of probably tens of or hundreds of thousands of pictures. Keith has got it up there. It's called Art's Own Ghostly Studio Photograph, or Own Ghostly Studio. Take a look at it. It's on my website now. If that isn't weird, what is? All right, my guest is Dr. Barry E. Taff. His new book is entitled Aliens Above, Ghosts Below, Explorations of the Unknown, and he is taking a giant leap. Dr. Taff, your book is in total available on the Internet. In other words, you can actually pay for it and download the whole thing on the Internet. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Really a new way to go, huh?
Yeah.
All right, and how long a book is it?
Oh, it'll be about 240 pages, I guess, 250 pages, depending on how it's formatted.
The final chapter just really jumps into what we've been talking about tonight. The name of the final chapter is the PSI UFO Connection.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Chapter 14. I mean, that's incredible that you would begin to make that connection. And in what way do you feel there is one? What have you seen in the world of PSI that seems to be a connection to UFOs?
Example, one of our most unusual cases went from almost 20 years ago out in Sunland, and a woman was seeing what she thought were apparitions. Objects moving about the house on their own, typical ports, as we call them.
Right.
Things disappearing and reappearing,
right.
Strange pounding, banging noises. And I said, when did it begin? She goes, well, I was walking in the canyon when I take a little stroll, and I saw a big glowing dish, like a disc. And from there on it proceeded where these like humanoid apparitions were, harassing her. And the end result was she disappeared. We don't know where she went. Her kids couldn't find her. We couldn't find her. But there was no evidence of foul play. Nothing was taken.
Wow.
No break-in, no money gone. Her car was there. Clothes were there. It's things like that. And an executive at a local television station had a poltergeist outbreak. we didn't experience it, but we interviewed the people. We felt it was a good case. And many months later, he was taking a vacation up north in California. They saw what they thought was a meteorite about to hit the ground. They followed it, and they saw a UFO landing, and they were abducted. But it began with a poltergeist.
It began with a poltergeist, yeah.
Now, what is going on? And what does this tell us about the nature of the phenomena? Is having an encounter with one, like having an encounter with a UFO, would suddenly make you more likely to be psychic or very sensitive? Or if you're psychically sensitive, does that increase your probability of running into a UFO?
Well, I say the answer is yes. And I say it is all interconnected.
Oh, yes.
And I say when we discover this interconnection, if we do, it's really going to be a shocker. What
if we found out that the future in some form already exists, that the information that makes it up can be accessed anywhere, anytime, and that the future is as much fixed as the past is fixed? It's just that we can't see it.
I don't even think we could handle that.
Right. And
because that would mean that we were all sort of marionettes walking around on a stage.
Except that we don't know what's going to happen from moment to moment, day to day. So
not now.
Free will.
Not now.
Right.
That's right.
And what if we learned that that we're one of many experiments by some other civilization that decided to pepper the universe with numerous diversified life forms?
Yeah. That free will is just a joke on us.
That power, money and power simply gives one the illusion of control.
Oh, hear. All right, west of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi. Hello there. Going once. Going twice. Gone. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi. Am I not pushing the right... I think I'm not pushing the right button somehow. Oh, I see what I've done. Oh, heavens. East of the Rockies, are you there?
Hello.
Hi. Do you have a question for the good doctor?
Yes, I do. I was wondering about the dimensions you were talking about.
Yes.
Where possibly could you go with further dimensions than what we know of, space and time? I mean, what other dimensions could there possibly be out there?
I mean, the most simplistic response is that the fourth dimension would be a temporal dimension in which space doesn't have any meaning, nor does time, where you're in a realm. The idea is, like Einstein said, at the speed of light, you could circumnavigate the universe in 40 years. Theoretically, if you reach the speed of light or surpass it, you can travel vast distances in virtually no time for yourself. That would be another dimension, in essence. If you exceed light speed and go superluminal, the universe is yours. What that would do to life, when you got back to Earth, how much time would go by, God only knows. But that implies that you're changing your dimensional status because, the whole idea of mass increasing, as you increase your speed and energy. There's obviously another realm there.
Well, here's one for you, and I presume that you may have heard of this or maybe you haven't, but it's big news. Scientists have now detected, as of a few days ago, a gamma ray burst from 12 billion light years out that they are now declaring to be probably equal in size to the Big Bang that created all that we know. I mean, let's see, how can they put it? So massive, they said, was the blast that for seconds it was as luminous as all the stars and all the galaxies in the universe. 12 billion light years out. And another Big Bang just occurred, or, well, of course, occurred a long time ago. But that's pretty weird stuff. In other words, out there at the edge of what we know to be our expanding universe, something happened like happened here.
Mm-hmm. Or else there were multiple bangs, and we're just now becoming aware of it.
And we're all living in these little individual bubbles that only occasionally attach to each other and allow movement through.
Well, I look at one of the chapters of my book deals with this. It's basically, I touch about this, something called brain holograms, the light within, about the fact that our brain functions like neural holograms. There is like the whole aspect of interconnectedness and equally distributed information, that space and time may operate like this regarding information, and that our brains are like little models of space-time sort of interfering with everything around it, and that's how we can perceive events in the future and the past and at great distance. If this model is even close to being accurate, it suggests that we're sort of like the same way a tree produces an apple. We are sort of connected back to the tree by some dimensionally shifting mechanism, but it's at a level we can't access yet with machines, but our minds can.
Well, we're constantly discovering new things, and when I talked to Professor Kaku yesterday about this explosion, he said, look, we toyed with the idea of two colliding black holes producing this immense energy, but he said you do the numbers, and even that does not account for the energy that we just saw. It doesn't even begin to account for it. And so, frankly, Art, we have no idea what happened out there. No idea. And that's from one of our great minds. So, weird. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hi.
Where are you?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
All right. What is your name?
My name's Kimberly.
Okay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I had an experience a few weeks ago that I was just hoping to get a little bit of feedback on. For some reason, I'm under the impression that you've spoken about these states of paralysis before in your show.
Oh, yes.
Yes? Okay, I haven't personally heard it. I think somebody had mentioned it to me.
No, it does and doesn't relate to what my guest is talking about. You're talking about an out-of-body experience which begins with a paralyzed feeling. It probably all winds into the same thing, but it wasn't specifically what the good doctors here are talking about. But go ahead.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by out-of-body experience, but this is definitely some sort of altered state of mind. And it had happened a few times in the past, about a year ago, and it just happened a few weeks ago. But this time I heard a sort of a voice, quite like those that were played on the tapes earlier in the show.
Oh.
And a few seconds later it was followed by another voice, a female voice, that said, "There's a justice in your mind now." And I was wondering if that sounded even vaguely familiar to you or the doctor, and if that, had...
Well, as far as what the voice said to you, that could be interpreted a million ways, depending on you and, a myriad of other things. As far as the experience, sleep paralysis, as you're describing, is actually quite common, and it is associated with out-of-body experience. It's also theoretically associated with some types of abduction. People claim that, whatever. It's really hard because there is a neurophysiological explanation for it, and there's also a quasi-paranormal explanation for it. But in terms of what may be initiating it, in other words, is it initiated because part of your consciousness departs your body, or is it initiated because you've woken up but not completely?
I mean, OBEs, out-of-body experiences, even the beginnings of them, remote viewing, near-death experiences, all of these things, I am convinced, wind together in dealing with this other realm that's as real, I say it on Dreamland, as real as the air we breathe, but we don't see the air.
Right.
All right. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hi, Art. Hi, Doctor.
Hi.
I have to agree. I believe everything is connected, too. Going back to the case you're speaking of, the movie the entity was based on.
Right.
The lights flying around the room caught my attention. Someone I know experienced something similar where a single small light appeared to enter their hand, leaving a small mark. Eventually, they went to bed in the morning. There was a second mark about a half an inch from the first. I was wondering if any of the lights you saw did anything similar to that.
No, the lights never caused any direct physical effects. There were other psychokinetic manifestations occurring during the course of the investigation, but the lights, other than occasionally being photogenic, produced no physical effects like that. No.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much for the call, and good morning. East of the Rockies, we missed you. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hi, this is Ed in Kenai, Alaska.
Hello, Ed. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm on a cell phone. Might cut you off. I was wondering if you knew whether or had heard whether the energy that we'd seen that was 12 billion light years away might be the other side of the bubble when the Big Bang went off.
We were just, I appreciate your call, sir. Dr. Barrett Taff is not necessarily the one to comment on this, but you're welcome to try if you would like, Doctor. Nobody really knows what happened out there.
Well, from what I've read in numerous publications, it sounds like it's a secondary Big Bang, or like a winking effect. But again, they said everyone's at a loss to even come up with any theories as to what could comprehensively explain this. I don't know. The fact that it's so long ago, it's really hard to deal with, and we might see more of these over time. I mean, who knows? With all the instrumentation we have now, orbiting the Earth outside the atmosphere, it gives us a much better opportunity to
whatever mechanism of creation there is may be ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else you say about it.
Right.
First-time caller line, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Good morning, Mr. Bell.
Good morning. Turn your radio off, please, and tell us.
One moment, please.
All right. That's
there we go. My
okay.
apologies.
That's all right. Where are you?
I'm in Bryan, Texas.
Okay.
What I wanted to know is it possible that our minds, being as little understood as they are and as powerful as they're thought to be, could we be generating a lot of these phenomena ourselves because we have a need to?
Okay, that's really a good question. Doctor, here we are talking about all of this phenomena being connected in some other realm or dimension, and here's a lady saying, look, could it be that none of that is true, and all of this is generated in our own brain, something I guess you have to think about?
Well, I mean, from my own perspective, I'd say, for example, 98% of my case file, in terms of hauntings and whatever, are psychokinetic, are poltergeist cases. That doesn't diminish their significance. It just tells us that the origin is suggestive of a living human agent. But we still have that other small percentage which strongly suggests we're dealing with discarnate intelligence of some sort, whether it's recorded in space-time that, reconstructs itself, or it's some kind of consciousness that's trying to display itself. Who knows?
Yeah.
The other phenomena gets much more difficult to deal with, but the most common call we used to get at the lab was people who had precognitive dreams. And instead of thinking they perceived the future, they think they caused it. And they're deifying the
well, there's a pretty good question.
And that's that is one of the most common calls we used to get in the lab at UCLA.
Okay, but how does one discern? There really is no way to discern, is there? In other words, if you preconceive something and it occurs, you then have no way of knowing whether you knew about it ahead of time or whether you in some way actually precipitated the event.
Well, that's an interesting thought, except that generally speaking, there's no evidence that humans, that we are essentially God and that we can produce an event simply with the thought of it. It's one thing to imagine stuff and then end up creating it, or, fantasize stuff and end up creating it because we evolved to that point. But just to say we think of it and it is, if that were the case, there'd be a lot more millionaires and billionaires on this planet. I for one, go with the thing of Occam's razor. You go with the explanation that most easily and realistically and practically explains the phenomena based on what you know about it.
Is probably the answer.
Right, and so it's one thing to sense the future. It's something else to cause it, to produce it.
You're right. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Barry Taff. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I don't hear you too well, sir. You're going to have to speak up. Where are you?
I'm in Fort Worth, Texas.
All right.
It's an honor to talk to you, Art.
Welcome to the program.
I got a question for you and him. I'll give you his first.
Fire away.
Okay, I was wondering, when you're using the equipment to sense the presence of a ghost, do you use something that would measure, like, electromagnetic waves or something like that?
Yes, we use basically what is like tri-field meters. They can measure magnetic fields, electric fields, radio, and microwave. And so we see if we can detect, transients or surges in the flux. And
have you detected this?
On occasion, yes, we have. But the problem is it's not consistent. But we have seen this occurring when phenomena is occurring. We see the magnetic flux seems to be affected.
All right, caller.
Magnetic flux, does it fall within a designated frequency range type thing?
Another good question.
It's more basically as far as its power level, it's in the milligauss region. So it's extremely low power level. And frequency range, it's basically in the low to extremely low frequency range.
No, that would make sense. That would certainly make sense. But you have measured this.
Yes, but we haven't had enough of it where we can really pin it down. But we've seen that we recorded this when there's no other source for the energy, and when the phenomena ebbs, so does the magnetic flux. In other words, it seems that there is a correlation, but until we get a lot more of it collected, it's still suspect as to the nature.
All right. Doctor, it sure has been a pleasure having you on the air.